The morning of August 5, 2012, dawned bright and tranquil over Oak Creek, Wisconsin. Nestled in the outskirts of Milwaukee, this suburban enclave was a patchwork of families, hopes, and traditions, none more vivid than the congregation at the Sikh Temple of Wisconsin. Unbeknownst to its members, this was the morning their sanctuary would become a stage for unimaginable tragedy. Wade Michael Page, 40 years old, was driving toward the temple. The man behind the wheel was unremarkable in appearance, a clean-shaven head, cold eyes, and a stocky build. But beneath the surface churned a storm of hatred and desperation. Armed with a 9mm handgun and an arsenal of ammunition, Page was on a mission, one he would not live to explain. Born on November 11, 1971, in Colorado, Wade Page's early life seemed no more extraordinary than anyone else's. His childhood, however, was marred by instability. Shuffled between schools and homes, he struggled to find roots. By his teenage years, cracks in his personality began to show. Teachers described him as withdrawn, and peers found him aloof, though not overtly menacing. After graduating high school, Page joined the U.S. Army in 1992. The structured environment seemed a lifeline for a young man adrift, but the military, too, became a chapter of failure. Discharged in 1998 for patterns of misconduct, Page emerged from the Army disillusioned and untethered. In the years following his discharge, Page drifted from job to job, a man searching for meaning but finding none. His spiral into white supremacist ideology began during this period, fueled by his immersion in the white power music scene. Page was not just a fan but a creator of hate. As the frontman for bands like End Apathy and Definite Hate, his lyrics painted a chilling portrait of his worldview, one seething with racism, xenophobia, and violence. These groups were not just musical outlets, they were recruitment tools. Page's involvement with the white power movement gave him a sense of belonging and purpose, albeit one rooted in toxic beliefs. He began frequenting online forums and rallies, deepening his commitment to a worldview that saw multiculturalism as a threat and himself as a soldier in a cultural war. By the summer of 2012, Page's life was unraveling. He had lost his job at a trucking company, was behind on rent, and had no close personal connections. Interviews with acquaintances reveal a man increasingly isolated and volatile. His music had not brought him fame or fortune, only notoriety within extremist circles. Page spent his final days preparing for an act he believed would immortalize him in the annals of hate. Surveillance footage from a gun store shows him purchasing ammunition just days before the attack. Witnesses described him as calm, even polite, a chilling juxtaposition to the violence he would soon unleash. At approximately 10:25 a.m., Wade Michael Page arrived at the Sikh Temple of Wisconsin. Inside, preparations for the day's service were underway. Families gathered, children played, and the aroma of langar, the communal meal, filled the air. Page entered the parking lot and began firing indiscriminately. His first victims were two men outside the building, shot at point-blank range. Panic erupted as worshippers inside heard the gunfire. Some attempted to hide, others ran to call for help. Inside the temple, chaos reigned. Page stormed through the halls, his weapons spitting bullets, leaving a trail of devastation. Among the victims were a temple president, a priest, and members of the congregation. Yet even amidst the carnage, stories of heroism emerged. One survivor, Satwan Singh Kalika, fought to protect others, ultimately sacrificing his life in the process. By the time law enforcement arrived, 6 people lay dead, and several others were gravely injured. Officers engaged Page in a firefight in the parking lot. After wounding an officer, Page was shot and incapacitated. As police closed in, he turned the gun on himself, ending his life with a single shot to the head. The Oak Creek Massacre sent shockwaves across the nation and the world. The Sikh community, already misunderstood and often targeted due to their distinct appearance, now bore the additional burden of tragedy. Vigils were held, and calls for unity echoed across communities. Investigations revealed no direct accomplices, but Page's connections to extremist groups underscored the pervasive threat of domestic terrorism. The incident reignited debates about gun control, hate crimes, and the spread of extremist ideologies. Though the attack was born of hatred, Its aftermath became a testament to resilience and love. The Sikh community opened its doors wider, educating others about their faith and culture. The temple was rebuilt, not as a place marred by tragedy but as a beacon of hope. Law enforcement and community leaders worked together to combat hate, creating initiatives to foster understanding and prevent similar tragedies. Survivors and families of victims turned their grief into action, advocating for peace and awareness. Wade Michael Page's story is a dark reminder of how hate can fester and explode into violence. But it is also a story of a community that refused to be defined by tragedy. The Sikh Temple of Wisconsin stands as a symbol of unity and resilience, proving that even in the face of darkness, humanity's light can prevail. As the gunfire fell silent and the dust settled on that tragic day, the true magnitude of the massacre began to unfold. 6 lives were lost, and many more were forever altered. The dead included beloved community leaders and innocent worshippers whose only mistake was being at the temple that morning. The Oak Creek Police Department quickly secured the scene, and federal agencies joined the investigation. Within hours, Page's name and identity were uncovered, along with his disturbing affiliations to white supremacist organizations. Questions arose immediately: was this an isolated act of a disturbed individual, or was it part of a larger conspiracy? For the Sikh community in Wisconsin and beyond, the attack was not just a personal tragedy, it was a shattering of their sense of safety. Many Sikhs had faced discrimination before, often mistaken for Muslims in post-9/11 America. But the deliberate nature of this violence added a terrifying new dimension. The question lingered: why them? Among the victims was Satwant Singh Kaleka, the temple president who had dedicated his life to building a place of worship and community for Sikhs in Wisconsin. On the day of the attack, he had fought back with courage, attempting to disarm Page with nothing more than a ceremonial knife. His bravery saved lives, though it cost him his own. Others, like Paramjit Kaur, a mother of 2, had come to the temple that morning for prayer and peace. Her family would later describe her as the heart of their household, a woman whose warmth and love radiated beyond her immediate circle. Each victim had a story, and as these stories came to light, they deepened the collective grief, but also highlighted the profound humanity of those targeted. Wade Michael Page's descent into darkness was years in the making. After his discharge from the military, his life had unraveled in slow motion. The sense of camaraderie and purpose he once found in the army was replaced by bitterness and resentment. His encounters with extremist ideologies filled this void, offering him a distorted sense of identity and purpose. In the insular world of white supremacist subcultures, Page was not an outlier but a product. He absorbed their propaganda, played their music, and became a mouthpiece for their hateful doctrines. Yet even within these circles, Page was seen as troubled. Former acquaintances from the hate music scene would later describe him as increasingly erratic in his behavior, obsessed with violent fantasies, and consumed by paranoia. By the summer of 2012, his financial troubles, isolation, and extremist beliefs reached a boiling point. His decision to target the Sikh community, mistakenly identifying them as a threat in his warped worldview, was a culmination of years of indoctrination and personal failure. The scene at the Sikh Temple of Wisconsin that Sunday was one of horror and chaos, but it also revealed the resilience of the human spirit. Amid the gunfire, temple members risked their lives to help others escape. One priest, despite being gravely injured, managed to guide children to safety. A police officer, Lieutenant Brian Murphy, was shot multiple times while attempting to protect the community he served. He survived, earning praise as a hero for his actions that day. After Page's suicide, investigators combed through his belongings, uncovering a chilling trail of evidence. His home was littered with symbols of hate, neo-Nazi paraphernalia, racist literature, and recordings of his own music filled with violent and supremacist rhetoric. His internet history showed visits to forums and websites dedicated to spreading extremist ideologies. In the days following the attack, Oak Creek became a focal point for national and international mourning. Vigils were held across the United States, with people from all walks of life standing in solidarity with the Sikh community. Political leaders, including then-President Barack Obama, issued statements condemning the attack and calling for unity. Yet, amidst the grief, There were questions that demanded answers. How had Page managed to acquire a gun despite his history of misconduct and ties to extremist groups? What measures could be taken to prevent similar attacks in the future? The Oak Creek tragedy became a catalyst for change. Advocacy groups intensified their efforts to combat domestic terrorism and white supremacist violence. The Sikh community, often misunderstood in mainstream American culture, used this moment to educate others about their faith, emphasizing their commitment to peace and inclusivity. Law enforcement agencies also took steps to address the growing threat of domestic extremism. The FBI revised its protocols for monitoring hate groups, and local police departments across the country implemented new strategies to engage with marginalized communities and prevent acts of violence. The Sikh Temple of Wisconsin, scarred but not broken, reopened its doors after the attack. The physical wounds of the building were repaired, but its symbolic importance grew stronger. It became a beacon of resilience, a reminder that hate can never overshadow the power of community and love. Survivors and family members of the victims became advocates, turning their grief into action. They participated in forums, spoke at schools, and worked with policymakers to push for stronger measures against hate crimes. Their message was clear: tragedy must lead to transformation. Wade Michael Page's story is a chilling reminder of the dangers posed by unchecked hatred and extremism. His actions on that fateful day were the product of years of radicalization, isolation, and personal failure. Yet his legacy is not one of triumph. Instead, it is a stark warning of the consequences of allowing prejudice and violence to fester unchecked. For the Sikh community and those touched by the tragedy, the events of August 5, 2012, will never be forgotten. But in the face of unimaginable loss, they have shown the world what it means to choose hope over despair, love over hate, and unity over division. The Oak Creek Massacre continues to shape conversations about hate, gun violence, and community resilience. It serves as a painful but necessary reminder that the fight against hatred is ongoing. By confronting the darkest chapters of our history, we honor the victims and ensure that their stories are not lost to time. The Sikh Temple of Wisconsin stands as a testament to this commitment, a place where prayers for peace echo louder than the gunshots that once shattered its walls.